All right, good afternoon. It's the afternoon. Good afternoon. I know we're getting to the end of our COP here, but the energy is still vibrant here in Dubai. And as a friend of mine used to say, afternoon session is the cemetery of public speaking because we all had lunch and the energy is winding down. Let me bring in the perspective of Africa by focusing on three aspects, I think, which is extremely relevant to the conversation loss and damage. What is the problem we're trying to address on the continent? And then second, what are we doing about it as the African risk capacity? And since we're talking about loss and damage, what are some of the big ideas we're putting on the table as the African continent so we can be part of the solution? Like in any problem, it's always important to understand what is the problem that we're trying to address on the continent. I often say there's a human face to climate change, and that is the drought in the Horn of Africa, with a lot of people losing their assets, life and livelihood. There is the tropical cyclone in Madagascar and Mozambique, with infrastructure being destroyed. But there's also the drought in the Sahel, where a lot of people are affected by drought, but also the loss of assets and so on. So what all these disasters have in common, it is what I call the human face of climate change. We should be inspired by the situation. People see what do we need to do and do it differently so we can at least affect the life of many Africans. Now, in the African continent, there is what we call African solution to African problems. So we're not just waiting for loss and damage to be part of the solution, and that's the reason why the African Union decided 10 years ago to launch my institution called the African Risk Capacity, with the sole objective of helping Africans, A, to show leadership, but second, to anticipate before it's too late. And that anticipation is, number one, to make sure we use technology and innovation to profile the risk that we're exposed to when they come to drought, tropical cyclone, and flood. And that information is extremely critical because it allows our policymakers to decide what to do with that risk, but more importantly, whether they decide to transfer the risk to the insurance market so we can mobilize additional resources to help Africans who are affected by disasters. The innovation comes from the fact that the insurance market today is an opportunity to mobilize resources rapidly so that the response of African countries is actually fully funded, as opposed to waiting till it happens, it may be too late. What I have just described to you is no longer just a concept. For us, it's the reality. 10 years ago, when we launched the African Risk Capacity, many people did not believe that you can leverage the insurance market to mobilize resources to respond to disasters where it happened. Fast forward, 10 years later, we provided up to $1 billion worth of coverage, about $150 million of payout, but more importantly, 150 Africans have been protected because of what we do. So it's no longer a concept we're just selling, it's something we've done. The question is, what does it take to actually scale up what I just described to you so that no Africans are left behind? And that brings me to my two big ideas, which I hope the loss and damage will take into account. Number one, the intervention of disasters management is actually holistic. It's not just providing capital or funding. It's helping Africans to mainstream early warning system because they do save lives. It's building the capacities of African governments so they can embed disaster management into their public policies, but also leveraging the insurance market, coming up with innovative financing, and that is social protections, solidarity funding. So all these things combined certainly will make it possible for Africans to build a sustainable and a strong disaster management financing going forward. So I'm hoping the Loss and Damage Fund will provide the necessary resources so we can put together what I could call an Africa Climate Preparedness Facility so we can support the initiative of Africans. Last but not least, I am not implying that insurance is the only answer. There are cases where the insurance may not be actually suitable to respond. Social safety nets, solidarity fund, contingency funding, these are other mechanisms that could be utilized in making sure that Africans strengthen their capability of responding. So that insurance, unfortunately, the affordability of premium is such that some countries even if they believe in transferring the risk insurance market, can't afford to pay the premium. So what we do at African Risk Capacity is mobilize resources, providing subsidies where necessary, so government can see the benefit of insurance and eventually protecting lives. So my plea and my hope is that the loss and damage fund, we don't get lost in the governance. Whatever governance put in place has to work for Africa, nimble, accessible, available in a way that the funding that we hear in the millions are actually available to those who need them. I'm also hoping that the procedures will not be cumbersome to the extent that you may hear the millions, but they may not get to where it's needed. Last but not least, we need to mainstream early warning system and make innovative financing available so no one is left behind. In doing so, support what we call African solution to African problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and everybody's being very good and remaining bang on time, so thank you.